Thomas, you ready?
You know me, I'm stickler for time. 30 seconds, Mayor.
30 seconds. There we go.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Mayor, showtime.
Good evening. Welcome to the regular City Council meeting for the City of Sugar Land for Tuesday, August 4th. A little bit about our agenda tonight. First, we're going to receive the invocation from Jennifer Lane. She will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And then we've got one recognition. Jennifer, would you lead us in the invocation?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. If everyone can join me in prayer. Dear God, thank you for this opportunity to gather today in freedom to discuss the business of the City of Sugar Land. We ask for your guidance that we may have the knowledge and wisdom to make sound decisions for the residents and staff of our great city. I ask you cast a shield of protection over our frontline workers as they go out and serve and protect the public. I ask that you embrace the Kramer family with your loving arms during this time of sorrow. I ask that you grant us the compassion and understanding to help us all guide and comfort each other. Sugar Land holds some of the best and brightest in the nation. Lord, help us all have the courage to step forward and lead our community towards a bright future for all. Amen.
Amen.
And now for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Jennifer. Recognition. Terry, Court Service Supervisor, Certified Municipal Court Clerk. We have a special guest. We have Ms. Tammy Odom, Court Administrator of Texas City Municipal Court of Record on behalf of the Texas Court Clerks Association. Tammy, welcome.
Thank you, sir.
We have Ms. Jennifer Brown, Director of Finance, and we have Ms. Kendra Beverly, our Municipal Court Administrator. Jennifer, Kendra, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor. Kendra is going to give us a little introduction, and then we'll turn it over to Tammy to do the recognition. That works.
That's perfect.
Okay, so today Terry is being recognized because she has obtained her Certified Municipal Court Clerk certification. She is the 122nd clerk to ever obtain this designation, and I'm going to pass it over to Tammy. We are super proud of Terry for all the hard work that went into this. Having recently achieved this certification, I know it was no easy task, so I'm going to turn it over to Miss Tammy, and she will tell you about the program and what all went into it.
Thanks, Kendra. Good afternoon, Mayor Zimmerman, council members, city staff, and citizens of Sugar Land. My name is Tammy Odom. I am the Court Administrator for the City of Texas City Municipal Court. I bring greetings and well wishes from Mayor Dole and the citizens of Texas City. I'm here today on behalf of the Texas Court Clerks Association as a member of the Education and Certification Committee. This committee oversees continuing education for municipal court clerks in the state of Texas. I appreciate the opportunity to come before you this afternoon to make this very special presentation. Out of approximately 3,000 court clerks in the state of Texas, you now have in your employ one of only 122 court clerks to have ever achieved Level 3 Municipal Court Clerk certification. To qualify for the title of Certified Municipal Court Clerk, a clerk must complete the requirements for Level 1, 2, and 3. These requirements include completing 40 hours of continuing education and passing a 4-hour exam at each level. In addition, you must attend a 24-hour assessment clinic, complete 40 hours of court observation submit a journal on those observations, and attend a 12-hour court administrator seminar. This rigorous course of study is a huge accomplishment and confirms the dedication to providing a fair and impartial justice system in which the City of Sugar Land can take much pride. On behalf of the Texas Court Clerks Association, in conjunction with the Texas Municipal Courts Education Center, the Texas Municipal Courts Association, and Texas State University in San Marcos, I am pleased to present Terry Terry with her Certified Municipal Court Clerk Certificate. Congratulations, Terry.
Tammy, thank you for that. Kendra, Terry, would you like to say something?
I would like to thank you for honoring me in this manner, and a special thanks to my boss for pushing me, encouraging me.
I can't imagine that Kendra wouldn't just encourage you.
No,
Most of the way, pretty much every step of the way, and I really appreciate everything that she did, giving me the time and helping me when I had questions.
Well, Terry, we're proud of you for that achievement. We really are, and we want to wish you all the best. Kendra, would you like to say something?
yes, no, and I was just going to say, honestly, Terry, the honor's all yours. We are so proud of you, and especially during these unprecedented times, she did have to jump through a couple of hoops in order to obtain the certification for right now. So we're super proud of her, and she put in all the work and the effort. I was just pushing her forward, because it is a tedious task, but she did it, and it's all yours, and we're so proud of you.
Thank you,
Absolutely.
Kendra.
Jennifer, would you like to say something?
I would just like to brag on our municipal court a little bit more. We actually have 3 of the 122 certified municipal court clerks in the state of Texas in our employ. And so we are very proud of them and all the work that they do every day. And these 2 individuals, Kendra and Terry, but we also have Brittany, who's certified as well. So we're very fortunate to have them on our team.
Well, you guys make us proud. Tammy, thank you very much for joining us tonight. All the best to you and your council.
Thank you, sir. It was a pleasure.
Stay safe.
Yes, sir, you too.
Now we're going to move on to item number 1, public comment. This is reserved for anybody that would like to comment about one of the items on the agenda that is not a public hearing. Thomas, do we have anybody signed up?
No, sir, we sure don't.
We don't have anybody signed up. Move on to item number 2, review of the consent agenda. Item number 3, the consent agenda. We're going to take all these items as one motion unless a council member wants to pull an item, at which time we'll take the remaining items as one motion, and then we'll have a brief presentation on the item that was pulled. Can I get a motion?
Move to approve. Second.
Got a motion by Porter, second by Kermali.
Yes.
If you'll vote, please. We've got a couple people that are hanging out. We'll do a roll call vote. Stewart?
Aye.
Himesh?
Aye.
Nishad?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Jennifer?
Aye.
Carol?
Aye.
And I'll vote aye. That's a 7-0 vote. Thank you very much. Item number 4, contracts and agreements. 4A, consideration of an action on authorizing the execution of a construction contract with Thacker Development Company in the amount of $130,754.66 for CIP PK 1901 Mayfield Park Restroom Project, and a budget amendment in the amount of $48,000 from the Sugar Land 4B Corporation to CIP PK 1901. We have with us Andrea Broughton, our Assistant City Engineer. Andrea.
Yes, sir. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. It's a pleasure to be here on this evening. My indoctrinating initial visit with you guys through Zoom, so this is This is interesting. Tonight, we're going to have the project, the Mayfield Park project, for your review and approval. I want to start off by giving a brief background. The Mayfield Park project, as it exists today, was completed in the summer of 2018 and currently includes trails, playground, pavilion, entry sign, landscape, and some site furnishings on site. Following the successful opening of the park, a public engagement meeting was held in the spring of 2019. This is where the residents in attendance actually got together and requested that a bathroom be installed at the park, along with the new expansion there. Following this request, the city evaluated and we explored some options to see how we could make this happen for the residents. We found out that we could use some CDBG funds that were available, and we were able to start the design phase of this project in the fall of 2019. Next slide. Here is a layout of Mayfield Park as it stands today. As you can see, the trail going around and the playground off to the right on the slide. And then with the red arrow and the rectangle there, that's where the restroom is proposed to be, kind of central placed in the park facility there. Next slide. Here's a photo of the actual restroom structure. As you can see, it has the dark brown metal roof with the brick veneer and light siding. And this structure has similar elements as the existing pavilion structure currently located near the playground. Next slide. The scope of this project that we're presenting this evening is for the site preparation and installation of the restroom, which includes the pad preparation, the extension of the utilities, the water and sewer, and the electrical for the building. And then it also includes surrounding landscape improvements with the extension of irrigation and, of course, site restoration of any impacted areas due to the construction. Next slide. So upon the completion of the design in February 2020, the project was advertised for public bid on April 15th and the 22nd. And then upon the completion of that, we received 3 bids and opened them on April 30th of this year, with the lowest responsive bidder being Backer Development Company for the amount of $130,754.66. Below here shows the bid summary of the bids we received. We spanned from $130,000 all the way up to $218,000. Our architect's cost estimate was $66,000 range, but due to the fact that this does require the successful bidder on the project to meet the CDBG requirements for the project, which includes extensive documentation and requirements associated with these funds, we feel that that may have contributed to the increase in that bid cost. Next slide. The current available funds for the project remaining from the design phase and the purchase of the prefabricated building are $83,488.92, combined with the SO4B funds received through their resolution 2020-07-03 of $48,000. That provides the project with a total available funds of $131,488.92, and this will support the award recommendation of the project. Next slide, please. So the proposed actions moving forward would be following the approval of the award of the contract, if approved by council this evening, to Thacker Development Company. The notice to proceed for the project is anticipated to be issued this week, if not the following week, to the contractor, and the work will begin immediately and is anticipated to be completed within 60 calendar days. Next slide. With that, we'd like to request for approval. The Engineering and Parks and Recreation Department recommend that the City Council authorize the execution and the construction contract with Backer Development Company, LLC, for CIP PK 1901 Mayfield Park restroom improvements in the amount of $130,754.66, and approve a budget amendment for $48,000 from SL4B to the project. Next slide. And staff is available to respond to any clarifying questions you may have.
Council members, any questions? Steve?
Thank you, Mayor. I would just like to thank the Parks Department for their, and the engineering for their creativity around coming up with this. Thanks for the Finance Department and the CDBG funding group for coming up with a way to fund this when we didn't really have a way to be responsive to the residents of this area. And so it would be my pleasure to make a motion to approve this.
Second.
Got a motion by Porter, second by McCutcheon. Steve, I would also say, I remember when this first came up and you pushed pretty hard to make sure that we put a restroom in this facility. It wasn't always something that was by unanimous consent by council, but you managed to use what I call the brute force and ignorance technique. Just keep pushing until you get it done. It got done, so congratulations. I've got a motion by Porter, second by McCutcheon. If you vote at this time, please. There we go. We've got it passes 7-0. Andrea, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank
Thanks,
you, Council.
Council. Item number 5, ordinances and resolutions. 5A, second consideration. Consideration of an action on City of Sugar Land Ordinance number 2197. An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Sugar Land, Texas, providing for a change of zoning from Business Office BO District to Planned Development PD District. Final development plan for approximately 0.7906 acres of land located at the southeast corner of Lake Point Parkway and Creek Bend Drive. And we've got Doug Schomburg, our city planner in development. Doug.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, members of council. This evening, we're looking at the second reading of this particular item, and we're going to give you just a quick overview of the project and also for the public record. 0.79 acres at that southeast corner of Lake Point Parkway and Creek Bend. It's for 9 single-family live-work townhome units. It is currently business office and is proposed for PD zoning in alignment with the 2019 approved Lake Point General Land Plan. The council last heard of this with the public hearing and first reading of the item back in May 5th of this year, where the applicant had a number of members of the public that were concerned with primarily the parking at the site, as well as was there going to be what type of businesses and also the intensity. So if we can go to the next slide. Just looking again for the record and for the public, the Lake Point General Land Plan is on one side of your screen there, and it is showing that the council authorized this for the townhome residential use. And then the right is the aerial at the property. It's, again, the strip right along the frontage of Lake Point Parkway. Okay, next slide. So let's talk a little bit about the second reading here that we've got. So you had that public hearing and first reading. As we said, there was significant public feedback read into the record, primarily expressing concern over adequate parking of the project, including a number of the citizens' concern about the proposed use of parking credit for the 7 existing on-street spaces that are right along the property. That had been done back on the south side of Lake Point with those live-work townhomes, but there was some concern about these based on existing uses. The council ultimately did approve the item by a vote of 5-2, with the caveat the applicant really needed to look further at revisions, look at this parking situation more closely, and examine that to see if there was something that could be done by council, was the direction. So we'll go on to the next slide. So I have included up here, this is basically the what council saw on the 5th. And essentially, this project back on the 5th had parking spaces that were both in the garage, a minimum of 2 parking spaces in the garage, and it contained 2 spaces essentially behind the gate, which again is the rear of the project on the upper part of your screen. The project also had 2 spaces along the access drive that is titled Reserve A, and that's private property. That is not public street. Finally, the applicant was asking for credit for 7 spaces that are existing, and then the applicant was looking at installing 2 spaces where there were none further to the south at the project. So essentially that was the layout that was shown. And while it met the 29 minimum parking spaces, it was depending more heavily upon street credit to get to that point. We'll go ahead and go to the next slide as the comparison now. So we worked with the applicant extensively after the meeting, and they looked at some different arrangements. They looked to see what they might be able to do to really bring more spaces onto the private property rather than the street itself, using that as a street credit for the existing street parking spaces, the on-street, if you will. And they were able, after some redesign and revisions, they were able to essentially bring in 5 additional parking spaces that were along the private property toward the rear. This included several spots that were between some of the property lines there, as well as additional parking spot on Reserve A. This also ended up being able to support enough where they were able to essentially eliminate the request for the credit on those 7 spaces. Those 7 spaces are public parking spaces. They can't be reserved for anybody, but they are going to be there, but they are no longer asking for that credit. So essentially, they were able to take and park 5 additional spaces onto the private property. They are proposing to still install the 2 additional parking spaces that are further to the south, and they are requesting only credit for those, but not any of the existing ones. So we worked back and forth for several iterations of that. We also talked with the applicant about some of the comments that we heard in terms of staffing, any type of employees. And the applicant has also added a provision in the PD ordinance that essentially says the site cannot depend on more than 1 outside employee at this property. So not only do you have the professional office only, you've got the limit to the 550 square feet in the unit on ground floor only, if they choose to do the optional business. But it cannot depend on more than 1 employee that doesn't live there. Those are caps and protections that we do not have in our live-work townhomes to the south. We feel like with that provision, as well as the essentially moving away from the credit, really strengthen compared to what council had seen before. And so we really do feel like Don and Mr. Owais, Mukhtar Owais' teams both really tried to take a close look at this, see what they could do based on what they heard, based on those council concerns. So let's move to the next slide. This is another exhibit that was added. This is essentially just showing, especially because we have some additional spaces that were between the units, this Reserve A, Reserve B, and the area that's going to essentially function as common space from an easement standpoint. This little drawing is going to help both with them on their private side for the FCCA and the townhome deed restrictions, as well as help us during the site plan and building permit review to essentially establish what is it that is essentially the common areas that is not just for individual owners to keep up, but for essentially the whole set of unit. It's just essentially a guide that provides that visual element of the areas that we're talking about. Okay, next slide. So essentially for consideration points, we believe the applicant has taken those comments to heart, both from the public as well as concerns from the council. It has taken some time for them to do that, but we believe that the result is a lot stronger than it had been. We do believe that the additional beefing up of the text essentially in the document in terms of if you do the office option, you've got some limitations not only of square feet, but you also have the limit on employees. And we also feel the exhibit that we just showed you will be helpful for implementing essentially the common area easements. We do believe that removing the idea of the credit for those existing on-street spaces, they're usable, they can be used, but they're not being requested to be credited. And the PD does have the provision that the applicant's own vehicles need to be parked on the private property with the garage. So essentially, this is definitely a stronger set of revisions than what the council saw on the 5th. We can move to the next slide. So finally, we do support the recommendation of approval that the Planning and Zoning Commission made to the mayor and city council before, but we also believe that these updated revisions at the direction of council do create a more straightforward and a better outcome. And we do fully support that. We are available to answer questions this evening. The applicant is on the call as well, both Don Jansen of PCD as well as Mr. Owace of the Owace Development. Next slide. But we'll be happy to take any clarifying questions from council.
Council members, any questions of either the developers or staff? Carol?
Thank you, Mayor. Before I ask my question, I would just like to say a big thank you to you, Don, and also the applicant. You listened to the residents and did some additional work on the parking plan, and this is a very, very solid, strong development plan. And I can't tell you how pleased I am with this, and I just really appreciate you all taking a second look at it. And I particularly like that it's limited to just one outside employee on site. And I'm wondering if the applicant read my mind about adding the parking spaces between units 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 8, because I had that same thought. But my question is, once you get approval, how long will it take to get this built and ready to sell?
From a staff standpoint, just mentioning to the council, what we would have the applicant go through once they're ready is the platting process to go ahead and formally create the lots. And then we would go through the site plan and building permit phase. Usually that's a few months from start to finish, although those are largely administrative except for the platting of the planning commission. And then from that point on, Don or Mukhtar may be able to answer.
Thank you.
We're ready to go. We're excited. We can't wait. So we're excited to get the platting process and the building permits process started. I know we have some work left to do with our architect to actually start designing the interiors, because up until now it was kind of a rough plan. Mm-hmm. We're just more worried about the site plan now. But now is when the fun begins for us. So we're excited. We're ready to get this going as soon as possible.
Deshaun?
Mayor, I'd like to make a comment. I was one that was actually opposed to this last time, and I want to thank Mukhtar and Don And the citizens who spoke up, you all listened to the neighbors, and we really appreciate that. That's why we're a beautiful city and will remain a beautiful city. Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve this.
I've got a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Got a motion by Kermally, second by Jacobson. Any other comments? You vote at this time, please. And it passes 7-0. Thank you, City Council. Don, Mr. Owais, thank you.
Well, thank you so
Look
much.
forward to having some more residents there in Lake Point.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Item number 5B, first and final consideration of an action on City of Sugar Land ordinance number 2207, an ordinance of the City of Sugar Land, Texas, implementing certain emergency powers under a declared state of disaster relating to the novel coronavirus by suspending certain ordinances to allow for temporary outdoor dining areas at restaurants. So we have Ms. Lisa Kosich-Meyer, our Director of Planning and Development Services. Lisa.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I'm going to provide a little bit of a background for you and then walk through this proposed ordinance that is before you for first and final consideration this evening. So as you recall, as of mid-March, March 13th, in fact, the city has been under a declared state of disaster to respond to the public health emergency related to the novel coronavirus. At a state level, the current governor's order, executive orders, limit outdoor dine-in service to a maximum of 50% of the restaurant's occupancy limit. As a side note, any outdoor dining does not count toward that occupancy limit. Locally here, we were recently approached by a local restaurant about the possibility of adding outdoor dining in the parking lot to accommodate some additional options for folks that would like to take advantage of dining. In a quick look at our city zoning regulations, we realized or remembered that there are a couple of sections that relate specifically to what can or cannot, in this case, happen within parking lots. There's two specific sections within the zoning chapter related to parking spaces needing to remain free of obstructions and available to accommodate vehicular parking, as well as prohibiting any uses that may conflict with the designation of that parking area. Next slide, please. So, but also at the staff level, we also recognize that under the current occupancy restrictions, the full parking capacity was not really being utilized or in fact needed due to the limitation on the dining. We also did a quick search for other cities and found that several, both in Texas and across the U.S., have in fact either put in place or have the process of considering temporarily relaxing regulations related to what can and can't happen within parking lots. Here locally in Texas, through Frisco's Open Frisco efforts, they have put a process in place for expanding outside dining options into parking lots. Denton recently initiated a pilot program to implement the allowance of parklets and streeteries based on the location to accommodate some additional outdoor dining options. Houston, in fact, is also, City Council there is considering the expansion of parklets through ordinance powers there. And we saw in various cases across the U.S. Some creative ways of trying to accommodate some additional options during these very unprecedented times. So in working with our Economic Development Department and other departments, we really wanted to take an aggressive approach and recommend an aggressive approach to support our local businesses and restaurants in these unprecedented times, all with the goal of balancing and making sure that they are open and operating safely. Next slide, please. So with that, we have prepared and are recommending and proposing ordinance number 2207, which would suspend sections of the code related to the parking lots, the use of parking lots and parking spaces. Through this ordinance, it would allow the temporary use of parking spaces for outside dining at restaurants. There are a couple of things that would be required. Requesters, restaurants would need to submit their request with the submittal of a site layout plan to show the outdoor dining area and that it meets the location and safety conditions that are included in the ordinance, which include or being located adjacent to the restaurant itself, that those spaces, the outdoor dining area is not within a designated handicapable accessible parking space or an existing designated fire lane. Also to ensure that that outdoor dining area doesn't block or impede any building exits, and to ensure that it would not be located in any drive aisles or impede any traffic flow around the site. Next slide. That site plan would also ensure that the setup and operation would comply with any fire and safety codes. For example, if they were to set up tents for the dining area, that there would be accessibility that would be maintained to that dining area. Any regulations applicable to the sale of alcohol would still apply, as well as any applicable spacing requirements or guidelines that are in place right now would also need to be adhered to, as well as from a safety standpoint, delineating the dining area with the use of any kind of barricades or visual markers. All of this would be outlined and detailed and documented in a letter agreement between the city and the property owner, the restaurant owner and operator, to agree to comply with that layout plan and conditions, and also really to acknowledge that this is a temporary accommodation. Next slide. Also included in the ordinance would be that the duration of the suspension would only be effective until the restrictions related to the indoor dining are lifted or until a state of disaster is terminated, whichever would be occurring sooner. Further, it would acknowledge that 14 calendar days would be the time frame by which that restaurant would need to remove any of the obstructions that they've put in place to accommodate the dining. Next slide, please. So with that, staff does recommend approval of ordinance number 2207. We believe that this can really continue to demonstrate the city's support for restaurants so that they can open or even stay open by providing additional dining options in a safe manner. This ordinance is being presented to you on first and final reading so that the suspension of the regulations can take immediate effect and any interested restaurants can proceed accordingly. Be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Lisa. Himesh.
Thank you, Mayor. Lisa, I think this is a good concept, and I'm supportive of it. I've got a couple of concerns. I guess number one, I would say a lot of restaurants typically don't own the land that they sit on. Many times that they're going to have ground leases, or they're just simply leasing space from an existing landlord. Do you see challenges with getting landlord approval and making, and the landlord and the tenant are going to have to work out an arrangement before they can come to us? Do you see that as a challenge? That's my first question. The second part to that is, how are we going to essentially market this or communicate this option?
Right. Very, very good point. So in terms of the challenge, yeah, we definitely see that there is a need for both the property owner and the restaurant operator to be in unison on this. We wouldn't want the restaurant operator to come forward and not have the approval of the property owner. So we would require both to be signatures on the agreement so that both are fully aware and acknowledge that of what is going on. That was something that legal strongly advised so that everybody is in sync and nobody's operating without the other knowing. To your point about communication, I envision that we are going to be working with our economic development departments. They have their program all in for SLTX and have a website, which I think we can promote this through. Also, we'll be working closely with ENS and Nicole Solis, who will be our point of contact for any restaurants that are interested in pursuing this. She'll be coordinating kind of the review efforts as well as coordinating the signature of the agreement. So both of those efforts, I think, will help get the word out.
Okay. Well, I'm very supportive of this, and I'll make a motion to approve.
We got a motion.
Second.
I've got a second by McCutcheon. Any further questions? Steve?
Maybe it's to Meredith. She's smiling. I'm for this. Our staff is amazing. They're creative. My question is liability for allowing people to be sitting around in what was a driveway or a parking lot. Do we encounter liability if somebody's dog runs out of the tent in front of another car or something?
Meredith, you want to answer that?
I'd be happy to. When we have this agreement that we've drafted up, that we require both the landlord and the owner-operator of the restaurant to sign, at the bottom right by their signature, they acknowledge by us giving them a waiver, so to speak, of these regulations, that they completely indemnify us and hold us completely harmless for absolutely anything that may happen on their property, whether it's rain or shine, dog or no dog.
I figured you had it covered. Just wanted to ask.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Anyone else? Najat?
Mayor, I just want to add to what Councilmember Gandhi mentioned about how we're going to get the word out. I think this is media worthy that City of Sugar Land allows restaurants to use the parking lot. I think we should utilize the media outlets and not just social media. I'm talking about ABC 13 and the others to get the word out. I think this is really needed, and restaurants are not even at 50%. Yeah, the order may say 50%, but there's 15, 20% of the occupancy that's being utilized. So we've got to keep these folks in business.
I'm sure Miss Cindy's watching, and she'll take note of that. Steve?
We'll coordinate.
Yeah, I did have one question. What's a parklet?
Yes, so that's a really great question. It's really a way to, that some cities are defining essentially a temporary constructed public space that can be in a parking lot or any other type of parking space for the benefit of anyone to use. Often in times it's associated with a restaurant. So essentially it's a little space that's set up and dedicated, temporarily using a parking space or any other type of parking lot area to expand options for dining. So it's a creative little thing. It's a creative little name.
Okay.
All right, I got a motion by Gandhi, a second by McCutcheon. If you'll vote at this time, please. And we have a 7-0 vote. Lisa, thanks to you and your staff for coming up with this.
Team effort. Thank you.
Item number 6, public hearings. 6A, public hearing. Receive and hear all persons desiring to be heard on the proposed conditional use permit for 4 new professional and medical office buildings adjacent to residential property on the 2.5 acres located near River Park Drive and Highway 99 on the Grand Parkway. We have with us Laura Waller, our planner, 1. Laura.
Yes, good evening. So this evening we'll be having the public hearing on this area. So it's proposed to be a conditional use permit because of residential proximity. So this area does back up directly to part of the River Park subdivision there. And so the area is zoned B1, which is neighborhood business. The proposal is for 4 single-story medical office buildings. The site is currently vacant. It's never been developed. A neighboring site is currently under construction, but because it doesn't back up to residential areas, it does not require that CUP. So we're here tonight to talk to you a little bit about this proximity issue. Next slide. So here is a Google aerial excerpt. So you can see here the areas that are under construction there to the south. North is the single family homes. And then there's some commercial along Highway 99 on the left side of the screen. And then to the right is the Best Western. So that's the hotel there at the corner. Next slide. The future land use plan does designate this as neighborhood commercial as well. The use would be allowed by right in the current zoning and under future use. The residential proximity ordinance that City Council passed several years ago does require a CUP so that you can limit impact on single family homes. That type of conditional use permit is also supported by the comprehensive plan. Next slide. So let's get into the specifics of the site itself. So the site is would have 4 single-story office buildings. There would be 2 buildings with 4 units and 2 buildings with 5 units. That's a total of 18 spaces for businesses to go in and 22,000 square feet. That would require about 110 parking spaces, and they have provided 114 in the site plan. This site would be accessed via an existing PAE-PUE, which is an access and utility easement combination that does run and it currently exists between the commercial areas that are along 99, behind them before you get to the site that's currently under construction, and then this site as well. On the rear of these buildings, where it does back up to the residential, there are no doors, no lights or sidewalks or drive aisles. So it is just the back of the building and then vegetation and landscaping. The buildings do vary from about 26.5 feet to almost 46 feet from the property line, which does exceed the minimum 25-foot rear setback. Next slide. So I have taken quite a few photos here for y'all to see. So pictures 1 and 2 are taken from behind the Best Western at the corner there near the top of the picture you're looking at now. Pictures 3 and 4 were taken from the end of the existing access easement. So I drove up there so we could see the site itself and how to get to it. And then pictures 5 and 6 were taken of the fence that exists behind this newer commercial site that's in front of along Highway 99. So you can see the fencing that is currently there, as well as the fencing that was recently upgraded by this commercial area. Next slide. So pictures 1 and 2, you can see on the right, picture 2, that's the start of the masonry wall that then extends all the way down the Best Western property line. So where that brick masonry fence stops is where the property line for this proposed development would begin. So all that wooden fence and some of those smaller oak trees, that is where the property is, the development is proposed, excuse me. And those smaller oak trees here in this corner were actually proposed to be kept. And the wood fence is proposed to be replaced, and we'll talk a little bit about that in just a minute. Next slide. So pictures 3 and 4 were taken from the access easement. So you can see it's a very large empty field, basically, currently. So this is proposed to be the 4 buildings of the parking lot. Next slide. So picture number 5, you can see a row of shrubbery and then what looks like maybe a newer wooden fence there. That was put in as part of the site plan for the commercial property that went up a couple years ago, and it fronts along 99. Then on the right, picture number 6, you can see the proposed area. So that fence is a little more dilapidated, a bit of maybe a couple of missing panels and stuff. So that fence is proposed to be replaced by a new 8-foot wood fence. Next slide. So the Planning and Zoning Commission did host a public hearing on March 10th. There were no speakers present. The commission, however, was concerned about having quite multiple fence types all along this area. So there are portions of the area that have masonry fence, and then the as you saw in the previous slide, the row of fencing there that was new with the row of shrubbery would not be affected by the CUP because it already exists. So if you required a masonry fence for this proposed CUP, there would be multiple fence types in a single residential yard. So the commission was very concerned about that. So in response to that, the applicant did suggest an 8-foot wood fence and agreed to work with the neighboring commercial property owner to extend that fence completely between each of the masonry corners on that wall. So it would be one single type of wood fence that at 8 feet tall between the masonry ends. On June 9th, that was presented to commission, and they did unanimously vote to recommend approval of the CUP with that 8-foot wood fence, as well as a couple of the standard staff recommended conditions. Next slide. So here you can see a site plan. This does include the 4 office buildings. There are 2 5 units. That would be the ones here on the right side of the screen. And then at the bottom of the screen are the 2 4 units. So that's a little bit smaller, but that is enough room for 18 tenants. So on the right side of the screen, that is where my little blue arrows are. That is the residential property line. So that's going to be the fence line that was a little bit broken down that they are proposing to replace with an 8-foot wood fence. Next slide. So here you can see the landscape plan. The landscape plan does include a solid line of trees all the way down this entire rear property line. So you can see quite a few trees, a solid line alternating elm and oak for the most part. Near the top, you do have 2 new breeds that were suggested by the landscape architect. This was due to concerns of the commission due to aerial easements back here for utilities. So they did propose cherry and laurel trees rather than the oak and elm because they do have a smaller height at maturity. So they would stay under that 15-foot aerial easement that's there in the rear of the buildings. Next slide. So here you can see the elevations of the buildings. This is the 4-unit, and next slide. This is the 5-unit. They are masonry, stucco with glass, double glazed windows for security in the rear of the building. P&Z did express maybe some concern because there are no lights in the back that maybe there would be higher potential for break-in. So they did propose double glazed windows rather than just single. But the finishes will be fairly neutral and natural stone looking. Next slide. So your points for consideration this evening are the rear of the project site is directly adjacent to existing single family. So mitigation measures do need to be taken. All the buildings are proposed 1-story and there are no doors, lighting, or drive aisles. So that does assist in limiting commercial impacts. The applicant does provide exterior building elevations so you can be exactly sure of what the residents will be seeing. Next slide. In addition to that, the applicant is proposing a solid line of trees. So the tree breeds and species has changed a little bit so that it will not veer with easements, but it does exceed the requirements of the development code, which is 1 tree per 30 feet and a 6-foot wood fence. So that's what would normally be required. But because of this CUP process and the extra mitigation, they are proposing a solid line. Additionally, they're proposing an 8-foot wooden fence that does have a baseboard and cap, and staff and commission do believe this is an acceptable compromise instead of the masonry fence. Next slide. Therefore, staff does recommend approval and first reading of the conditional use permit, and we'll be happy to answer any questions after the public hearing.
Thank you, Laura. This time I'd ask council members to hold their questions. We're going to go ahead and open the public hearing. Receiving or hear all persons desiring to be heard on the proposed conditional use permit for 4 new medical and professional office buildings adjacent to residential property on approximately 2.5 acres of land located near River Park Drive and Highway 99 of the Grand Parkway. We're going to go ahead and open the public hearing. Thomas, do we have anybody that wants to speak?
No, sir, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. We're going to go ahead and close the public hearing. We're going to move to item number 6A, first consideration of an action on City of Sugar Land ordinance number 2206, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Sugar Land, Texas, granting a conditional use permit for 4 medical office buildings directly adjacent to single-family residential property near the East River Park Drive and Highway 99, located on approximately 2.467 acres of land within the neighborhood business B1 zoning district. Let's open it up to council members. Questions? Amesh?
Thank you, Mayor. I've got a couple of questions, if you may indulge me a little bit.
Yes.
Laura, number one, I want to just confirm this. There won't be any trash pickup or trash on the backside, right?
No, correct. So if Secretary can go back to the site plan slide. So the dumpster is proposed to be on the front side. So it'll be near the access easement and near the current and existing under construction commercial buildings there on the front side. So it will not be near the residential at all. So if you picture the site plan, there we go. This is the dumpster down here.
Okay. So on the, I think you alluded to it, but just want to confirm. So there will not be any lighting on the rear, the side facing the residence at
Correct.
all? Is there an actual prohibition in the language?
There is not, but it is, there is no lighting included, no wall pack lighting in the photometric plan or included on the elevations. So there is a metric plan.
Right, but even though it's not on the site plan, should we have language in the plan itself prohibiting it?
I don't think that's actually necessary because we do have a photometric plan that's also one of the exhibits, which shows exactly where each lighting will be and what type of lighting it is. So because those locations are not shown on that plan, we can hold any builders to that plan to make sure there's no lighting included.
Okay. And usually, River Parks Homeowner Association, Property Owners Association, they're pretty vocal about whether they support or object to conditional use permits. Were they contacted at all on this?
I believe that the applicant was going to be reaching out. We do have Justin Schrader with LJA. He should be on the meeting. He might be able to answer that question more fully, but they were urged by P&Z and staff to get in contact with that HOA, especially about the fence.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yes, Laura, this is Justin with LJA. Thank you, guys. We did reach out to the HOA president. We actually have a field meeting set with Rodney next week. He was not available this week. And we've also talked with Kim Moore with who's with the management company for the River Park HOA. So Jason Hughes, who actually is the owner developer, he has had several phone calls with Rodney to discuss this fence and ultimately what the homeowners are going to want it to look like as well. So and to date, our belief is they're supportive of having the fence replaced.
Yeah, thank you for doing that. I know that's not a requirement, but I think it's a good thing to do. And I'd urge you to continue to work with them and make sure that they're supportive of this.
Stuart?
That's all I had.
This is Doug. Staff also notifies the public hearing as a courtesy to the HOA, so I just wanted to state that for the record.
Thanks,
They
Doug.
did get a public hearing notice.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Stuart?
Thank you, Mayor. Laura, 2 questions, please. Down the line, when the wood fence deteriorates and needs replacement, is it possible that the landowners or whomever could replace it with a 6-foot fence? And the reason I ask is because I've just lived this nightmare in one of my neighborhoods.
So one of the conditions of the CUP is that the fence will have to be 8 foot with a cap and baseboard. So in the future, if there's ever any repair or replacement, it has to be an 8-foot wood fence with a cap and baseboard, unless the CUP comes back to council and is changed. Additionally, there is a condition on there that the commercial property owners are going to have to work with the residential property owners as to repair and replacement and maintenance, because it will most likely be on the commercial property owners' shoulders to fix those issues with the fence, because the commercial business tends to be more hard on the fence.
Laura, I'd just like to tell you that just make that a condition of the CUP, that the commercial owner of the property has to maintain the fence. It's their sole responsibility for them to maintain that 8-foot fence and replace it?
Well, so that would be a condition that council would need to discuss, maybe with Meredith. The condition that we normally include in this type of CUP is that the property owners have to work it out amongst themselves in the future. But the condition is not actually, it doesn't say who has to do it. It says they have to work it out in the future.
I know, I'm requesting it. So I'm making, the approval of the CUP, in my opinion, is going to be conditional upon that requirement being in the CUP. And that's within, that's within the, council could have done it, or planning and zoning could have done it. Council's requesting it, or I'm requesting it. That is a condition of the CUP.
I'll add it.
Okay, Stuart?
Thank you, Meredith.
Yeah, Mayor, thank you for that, because I'm in 100% agreement with that. We have to make certain that that the fence height stays the same. Laura, do we have any ordinance that prohibits the parking of very large vehicles or any sort of equipment that is visible above the 8-foot fence line? Again, I just lived this whole thing.
So there are some standard development code regulations that do require screening of any material, any outdoor storage of mechanicals. There's also limitations on what can be stored outdoors, where it can be stored, and for how long. So, and all of that is typically only seen in M1 and B2 districts. The neighborhood business has very, very strict rules about outdoor storage.
Oh, so they couldn't, because there's so much space behind the setback behind the one building, they couldn't rent it out to a daycare school bus, which is 9 feet tall?
No, that would not be allowed.
Okay, thank you.
Nishan?
Here, I want to go back to Justin. It seems like Rodney is not on board yet. I'm not sure. Has there been a meeting with the HOA president? Because I know, as Himesh said as well, he's very hands-on. And I'm just not sure whether he would be okay with just a wood fence when we've already got masonry on a portion of it by the hotel as well.
So I know, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I know that Jason Hughes has had a couple of phone calls with Rodney, and we've exchanged some emails on what the plan is and to talk about the fence. Rodney is scheduling a meeting. We were supposed to have a meeting this week. He was not available. I don't know if he was on vacation or had some work commitments, but we're supposed to meet him out there at some point next week to walk the property line. So I don't know if Jason, if you want to chime in on any other items that you talked with Rodney about.
Meredith, I think it's possible to approve it based on the condition, based on what we've already got in there, based on the condition that they secure the approval of the HOA. Correct?
Certainly.
Yeah, that's a good point, Mayor. I'd like to make sure that the HOA
Let's do that.
Fully on board here.
Lisa, would you recap the conditions, please, so far? Any other council members have any comments? Yes. Carol?
Yes, just wanted to mention, in FCCA, we did have a lot of wooden fencing, and it was just constant, ongoing repairs, maintenance, replacement, and it was just a constant problem. And FCCA did, tear down all of the wooden fences and replace it with masonry. So I'm on the side of this being a masonry fence instead of a wood fence.
Steve?
Yeah, I just want to maybe put a little finer line on what we just agreed to. I do agree that the HOA should be actively involved. And if they have concerns, show up at a public hearing and express them. What I don't want to happen is that we appear to have empowered the HOA to make changes to the plan we've seen tonight. So if they're not happy with it, I'd like to know what happens. That we're not telling the applicant here tonight that the HOA can come down and say, oh, we want to change this, we want to change that, and that they have the power to do that. I think what happens is if there's an issue, it has to come back here.
That's the way that I envisioned it, Steve, is it's being approved based on the conditions that have been proposed, and if the HOA is not on board, then they'd have to come back to the council. Ms. Shaw?
Mayor, one last comment. I know we put out a public notice and people get notified, but have we approached these 7, 8 homeowners, and do they understand what's about to happen when this moves forward, Laura?
So we did send all of them letters, the address to the homeowners, and it was sent to their house. We did not put out like phone calls or anything like that, but they did receive letters both for the public planning and zoning public hearing as well as this public hearing, and those letters were also sent to the HOA for both public hearings. So if they had any concerns, this would have been their second opportunity to let us know.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Lisa, you want to recap the conditions for us?
Absolutely. Laura, are you, Mayor, are you talking
Or
about?
Laura, whoever wants to recap them, whoever.
Are you talking about the ones, Mayor, in addition to those that are listed in the ordinance as proposed? And
Correct.
then as you have discussed, making the commercial property owner the responsible party for the maintenance and repair of the fence?
Hello?
8-foot fence.
Hey, Laura,
And then the other part was that that it would be conditional upon the HOA, and that the HOA would have to come back to council, or the owner would have to come back to council if in fact.
The property owner.
And the HOA is only making a thumbs up or thumbs down based on the conditions that have been proposed. They can't impose additional conditions.
Right. I will look to Meredith to.
This is Jason with SHB. Can you guys hear me? 1 second. Yeah, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, Jason Hughes was trying to comment a little bit earlier. I was having difficulty unmuting him, so I was able to unmute him if you'd like for him to make some comment.
He is the development owner.
He's okay.
Hey, this is Jason. Sorry about that. I tried to chime in about 4 different times, but for some reason it would unmute. So I personally discussed the 8-foot fence with Rodney, and we are both on the same page in agreement on what to do. We are simply meeting next week so that we can walk the different fences around the project to make sure our design mirrors. That's his only request, is that we mirror the 8-foot design that they have in other places so that it doesn't look like a different fence.
Okay.
But we are in direct communication. He's out this week, and he's been in contact with homeowners and stuff like that. And it seems to me, through conversation with Rodney, that everybody's on board, and they're very clear on what we're going to do. And Rodney is 100% on board as far as replacing it to an 8-foot fence. So just for clarity for you guys.
Okay. Thank you, Jason. I'll go ahead and make the motion, Lisa.
I'll second it, Mayor.
Got a motion, got a second.
Did you have a?
Go ahead.
Mayor, can I ask for one point of clarification?
Sure, Mike.
On the HOA, or is it contingent on them receiving approval from the HOA?
It's
The
well,
motion, because
it appears that what's happened, Mike, is they've had that conversation.
Okay.
I'd still like staff to circle back around to make sure that the HOA is clear on the additional restrictions that we've added so that he knows what that is. But
okay, I just wanted to make sure we're not having the HOA put an item on to vote to approve this item that.
No,
okay,
that's not it at all.
Thank you.
Yep.
And Mr. Mayor, if I may, for clarification on the record for the motion. So the motion is to approve with including conditions of a masonry fence as well as the 8-foot height restrictions, or am I way off here?
No, that's not correct. The motion is the restrictions that had already been recommended, I guess, by P&Z, with the additional restriction that an 8-foot wooden fence with, Lisa, whatever that language was, a cap on the top and the bottom, with the additional responsibility that the owner would have the sole responsibility for maintaining that fence. as long as they own the property.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
And Mayor, the second condition was also confirmation that the HOA is on board with the proposed CUP.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
I've got a motion. I made the motion. Carmali's got the second. If you'll vote at this time, please. Ramesh, I've got you. You're not in. There you go. And it's a 7-0 vote. Thank you, council and staff. Thanks, Lisa.
Thank
Laura. Item number 7, City Council City Manager's Report, 7A, Council Member Reports. Carol, let's start with you.
No report, Mayor.
Stewart?
Mayor, yesterday and today I attended the Texas Municipal League Legislative Summit. It's where the TML puts together its legislative program for the upcoming session. And I would have to say that I got quite an eyeful and an earful. And everything that you've been telling us is more than true. So more to come.
Welcome to the world. Nishan?
No report, Mayor.
Ramesh?
No report, Mayor.
Steve?
No report, Mayor.
Jennifer?
I attended a webinar for Fort Bend ISD, a close-up and outlook on the beginning of school with Dr. Dupree. They are going online. The target date of August 17th. Lamar CISD's first day is supposed to be August 24th, with offering an option to attend in person. So they are still working out the logistics of that. And that is all I have.
Thanks, Jennifer. For my part, Mike and I have been meeting with the Commissioners Court, Fort Bend County Commissioners Court, regarding the 2020 mobility bonds that are proposed. We haven't received a copy of the list yet, but we've now met with 3 of the commissioners, that being Commissioner DeMerchant, Commissioner Morales, and Commissioner Prestige. We have the Commissioner Andy Myers and Fort Bend County Judge KP George this week, and then we'll report back to the council on what we on the feedback. Item number 7B, City Manager Report. Mike?
No report, Mayor.
At this time, we're going to move on to item number 8, closed executive session. 8A, closed executive session is authorized by Chapter 551 Texas Government Code in accordance with Section 55107 for personnel matters for the purpose of discussion with respect to the city manager quarterly performance report. And at this time, we're going to go ahead and recess and reconvene in closed executive session.